So then thinking about kind of that first contact and your intake process, how has your intake process needed to change through the years in order to maintain low barrier and survivor defined services?
I think the biggest change was with us in how we had the conversations, that how we talked about things, how we learned to recognize maybe behaviors that possibly meant there was some history of substance misuse or history of, even other traumas like sexual assault, or, sometimes there's certain responses that people have to that can help guide a conversation a little bit. So learning to pay attention and to listen and to offer things without the judgment, to be able to say that some of the things that we incorporated in were just real statements of conversation, like these are things that we see that are common, that are not unusual. We know that women who come into our shelter or who access our services sometimes are struggling with X, Y, and Z, and kind of maybe normalizing it a little for people to realize they're not alone and that this is a place that you can have a conversation. So we changed a lot of our questions to be a lot more open-ended, instead of looking at things like, everything yes and no. Have you experienced this? Have you experienced that? Maybe offering a scenario and saying, has anything like this ever happened to you? Or has anybody ever thought that you were involved in alcohol or drugs or other kinds of things that may be sensitive, things that they wouldn't be ready to talk about? And I think, right, even if they don't open up right at that moment, which a lot of people don't when they first walk in the door, I think continuing to talk about those things and pay attention to behavior changes in the residents, for instance, in the shelter, and learning how to have those kind of initial conversations has been very important. And that's probably been the biggest challenge in some sense, is teaching staff, because it's something they have to practice and think about. You can't just do a training and say it once. You have to really try to incorporate it into every piece of what you're doing, recognizing that that might be something that we're going to be addressing, and making it okay for people to say that they're struggling, even if they're actively using, or if they feel like they're going to use. I've worked with women that are able to come to me and say that, and I think it has a lot to do with the way we approached it on that initial intake, and sitting in a way that people just felt comfortable and in charge of the conversation a little bit more.
Yes. It's so important to when we're first getting to know somebody and we're asking them all these questions, all these yes or no questions, we often don't recognize how we're really putting someone on the spot. And
Right.
I love how you talk about sharing examples and asking more of those open questions, and just offering information, letting people know, that this is a common reaction, and that if this is something you're experiencing, that we're here to support you. And then that, as people start to build that safety, as people start to get to know the staff and the other residents, and just get that felt sense of safety in the program, then they can start to ask for that support if that's something that they would find helpful.
Absolutely.